So what if the GAA was to introduce an open draw in the style of a Champions League knockout format or a World Cup style format? Now this is something that I've been calling for quite a while. If you've watched a couple of my videos in the past couple of weeks, you would have seen me refer to this group stage draw that we could have done not in a provincial format but actually in an open draw style format. Now obviously there's been a lot of debate in regards to the structure of provincial championships in the past couple of weeks, with the obviously announcement that came out from the GAA a couple of weeks ago in regards to how the structure is going to look for this year's championship in Gaelic football. There was a lot of people that were calling for the open draw. I do really feel like, especially in 2020, that this was a year that they really could have introduced something new or something different, given the current climate that we're in and given the current circumstance. Now, is this something that the GAA should introduce maybe in the long term? Perhaps not. I think there's ways they could tweak it, but certainly what we will do is we will have a look at a sort of mock draw that I've created in a group stage format. I did share this out on Instagram and Facebook as well, so we'll see some of your comments in regards to that. But certainly this is something that I would most likely look to introduce in Gaelic football at some point in the future. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope you're all keeping well. First of all, if you're new around here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. First time, of course, wearing a Dublin jersey in one of these videos. Hopefully I don't get half of you unsubscribing now, but look, listen, we'll dive straight into it. This open draw, of course, style format, I've talked about it quite a bit, and I suppose what we'll do is we'll actually have a look on camera right now, on screen right now, at the draw that I would have created. Basically, the only kind of tweak I done was I kept all four All-Ireland semi-finalists apart from last year. So Kerry, Dublin, Tyrone and Mayo all kept apart. I know we'll get into some of your comments now in a moment, but I know some people were saying, maybe you should have one county from Division 1, one county from Division 2, one county from Division 3, Division 4, etc. in each of the groups. That way it will be seeded. I think that's something that could be experimented with as well. But I do feel like this is something that the GAA need to introduce, in my opinion, because certainly, this would very much level out the playing field for a lot of the lesser counties. You look at Westmeath, you look at Antrim, you look at Leitrim, Wicklow, all these sort of counties only potentially going to have one or two games max in the championship this year, and in general, of course they'll only normally have one or two games, and then they'll go straight into Tier 2 competition from now on, kind of moving forward. And I feel like it doesn't serve the county's needs, it doesn't serve the fans' needs, in my opinion. It's great for the players to get more games, but I feel like in this sort of style format, you'd have each county having at least 3 games, if not more, depending on if they were to progress or not. But if we have a look here, of course, we'll see Group A: Down, Longford, Wicklow and Antrim. I feel like I've kind of highlighted Group A here in my opinion, because I feel like this is the benefits of an open draw, and how it would basically work is each county that finishes first would play in an All-Ireland quarter-final. And this is the benefits here, of course, because you'd have 4 counties who don't normally play in All-Ireland quarter-finals, don't normally have significant matches in the championship, and you'd look at that group and say, what an opportunity for Down or Longford or even Wicklow or Antrim to potentially get to an All-Ireland quarter-final. Very competitive group, and I feel like that's kind of the benefits to it. So we kept apart the All-Ireland semi-finalists last year, and I suppose if you have a look at Group E, you've got Mayo, Waterford, Wexford and Tipperary. I suppose maybe you'd look at that and say, well, it's a bit of a landslide and that kind of effect. I mean, Mayo would probably easily win that group, and would probably, something like this would suit them a lot more than the Connacht Championship, where things are very competitive. I suppose it's one of them things. I think if you keep apart the All-Ireland semi-finalists from last year and then just have it completely open, I think it creates a situation where, on the odd year, if you're a Laois fan or if you're an Armagh fan, you might just get that lucky draw and you might you know, go on a bit of a run, catch a bit of momentum, and I think it would just be fantastic for some of the lesser counties. You know, you look at Group H, you got London, Tyrone, Meath, Fermanagh. I think that's a pretty good group. You know, Group F, you've got Carlow, Cavan, Donegal and Cork. Again, quite competitive. Donegal, of course, in there, Cork in there, Cavan as well. You know, 2 Ulster finalists from last year, so quite competitive. You look at Group C, Laois, Armagh, Kerry and Limerick. Maybe if you're a Limerick fan, you'd say, you know, there's no chance of Limerick winning any of those games. But I suppose this is the nature of sport, of course. And I feel like if you have this open draw, you know, you might get lucky one year and the next year you might not. And I feel like this creates more opportunities. And as I said before, you know, each county is going to have at least 3 games before a potential All-Ireland quarter-final. And I think from there, you know, you could do an open draw again, or maybe then you could seed it. But this is kind of how I would probably go about it. You know, you look at Dublin, obviously they were paired with Offaly, Roscommon and Sligo. You know, the only kind of problem is you might just have a landslide victories. You know, Dublin are probably going to cruise through that group. But I think, you know, in Leinster they cruise through it anyway, so it probably wouldn't make too much of a difference. But anyway, what we'll do now is we'll have a look at some of the comments on Instagram and on Facebook just to see some of your lads' reaction to this. I did post this a couple of weeks ago, of course, and a lot has happened in between. But I suppose we'll have a look at GAA Zone's comment first of all here. He says every team should be seeded according to what division they are in. And I suppose, you know, he makes a good point there in that extent. I think the only problem I would probably have with that would be maybe then you would have all the Division 1 sides that would get to an All-Ireland quarter-final year after year. It would put more emphasis potentially on the championship, especially on the likes of Division 2 and Division 3. It's definitely worth something considering. I feel like for 2020 I would have gone with this format, or even maybe completely open. I suppose the only worry would then be if you had Dublin versus Kerry in the same group, but certainly maybe having some seeding according to the National League divisions would be certainly something they could look at introducing as well. I would certainly be up for that also. GA Statsman also says the pots should be according to what division they are. Promotion and relegation should come into the equation too. Example, Cork in pot 2, Mayo in pot 2. And I suppose that kind of just backs up what GA Zone said there as well, of course. And certainly bringing in some seeding moving forward, if they were to introduce this, would be something that they could introduce most definitely. But certainly just for 2020 and for the once-off year, and given how crazy 2020 of a year has been, this is certainly something that they could introduce. Another comment came in here from Aaron9090. Are you having a laugh? Laois, Armagh, Kerry, Limerick. You wonder who will win that group. And, you know, this is kind of the nature of the draw. You know, this is something that happens with the draw, in my opinion. You know, it's something that you'd look at and you would say, okay, maybe it's a little unfair on this county, or maybe it's a little unfair on that county. But year on year, depending on how the draw goes, and you know, in my opinion, I just feel like this would be a lot better for a lot of the counties. You know, even for Limerick. Look, listen, Limerick football, Gaelic football, in most years will only probably have 1 or 2 games in their championship anyway. Even with this draw, it's better because you have 3 games and you have matches there that they can look forward to. You know, playing Armagh, playing Laois, playing Kerry, for example, in this group that they're in. I think it would just do wonders for Limerick football. And you could do situations where you've 1 game at Croke Park, you've 1 game at a neutral venue, and then you've 1 game in your home stadium. And it would just be very beneficial for a lot of these counties. You know, can you imagine when fans return and Limerick play Armagh and Croke Park? I think it would just be a very good spectacle, in my opinion. And you know, it depends year on year how the draw would go. You know, as I said before, you look at Group A, Down, Longford, Wicklow, Antrim. Fantastic group for those counties, and it's something that, you know, you could easily get behind. And then on Facebook, Michael Cronin has given a bit of a prediction here in terms of the group. So he says Group A, Down, hard to call. Group B, Monaghan. Group C, Kerry. Group D, Kildare, but again hard to call. Group E, Mayo. Group F, Donegal. Group G, Tyrone, or Group G, Dublin. Group H, Tyrone. Sean Flanagan says would like to see something different than current setup. Apart from Donegal v Tyrone first round and Connacht final, maybe Kerry v Cork and Munster. That's only 3 good games from 30 in all 4 provinces until the Super 8s. And I completely agree, absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I've put this draw together, in my opinion, because, you know, Donegal versus Tyrone in the first round of the Ulster Championship is just not fair, in my opinion. I feel like even in the original format, it still isn't fair in my opinion, you know, going into the back door then and having to go about it that way. I feel like this way you're leveling the playing field for each team. Each team has 3 games. If you're good enough, you're good enough, you'll make it through. If not, you won't. And again, I feel like you'll have a lot more competitive matches in this draw. For example, you know, you'll have Tyrone versus Meath, you'll have Donegal versus Cork, Donegal versus Cavan, you'll have Kerry versus Armagh, which would be an interesting game. You'd have Kildare versus Derry, which I think would be an interesting game. Galway versus Monaghan, for example. Even Longford versus Down, Longford versus Antrim. You'd have a lot of very competitive games. I think you'll find a lot more competitive games in this draw than you would in the current format, in my opinion. Barry Doherty says this isn't an open draw. An open draw is 32 counties plus 2 in a hat, and Team 1 plays Team 2 and so on, where Team 1 could be Dublin and Team 2 Kerry. A truly open draw could see a big dog go out on day 1. Now, the only issue with that is if Dublin and Kerry ended up playing each other. I feel like that would cause just a bit of a problem, in my opinion, if you had the All-Ireland finalists in the same group. Now, I wouldn't be totally against it, in my opinion, but I just feel like from a fan perspective, from a media perspective, and even the GAA themselves, they do not want to see their 2, you know, Dublin versus Kerry is the El Clasico of Gaelic football in many ways. It's the biggest game. It's always been the biggest game in Gaelic football, let's be honest here. And, you know, if them 2 were to play each other in this group, I think it would be slightly unfair to have a truly open draw. That's why I would have at least the 4 semi-finalists kept apart. I think at least in that way you're still allowing the chance for a lot of other counties to potentially get a completely open draw. And you're still allowing the chance to have the 4 semi-finalists get an easier passage through to the quarterfinals, and then of course from there have a completely open draw. So you wouldn't have this same 4 semi-finalists every year, in my opinion, because I think it would be a lot more trickier. But anyway, lads, that is going to be the end of the video. Of course, do leave a like, subscribe, all that if you haven't already. Do let me know down in the comments below what you think in regards to this you know, Champions League format draw as such. You know, certainly in my opinion, I feel like it's something the GAA should have introduced in 2020, but unfortunately they have opted out of that and they've gone with the original format. But maybe something down the line, it is something they could certainly explore, and I feel like it would be a lot more exciting for numerous Gaelic football and hurling fans. I suppose not so much in hurling. I think the format is great there, but certainly for Gaelic football, the format would do a great job. Anyway, my name is Aaron. Do have a lovely weekend, have a lovely Saturday, and I'll speak to you soon.